All right, guys, welcome to Talk the Talk with Tribe Title. Today's guest is Trevor Brooks. Thanks for coming on, Trevor.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me here.
No problem. So, kind of exciting transition right now. So you just came on with KW, correct?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I signed on with the KW team and KW Realty Livingston, and I will be specifically tasked with establishing a KW commercial brand for the area.
That's incredible. So you're the first commercial agent to be in this facility, correct?
Yes, there's some other agents that already work there that have done commercial transactions, but the first one to bring a commercial focus to it and to formally open up the KW commercial brand of Keller Williams.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now how long have you been doing commercial real estate?
10 years, really.
Okay.
Licensed in 2012, been doing 10 years, primarily focused here in Livingston County.
Yeah.
And now I'm just excited to tackle a new project. Get to take a great brand, an already established brand like Keller Williams, add the commercial specific component to it, and start to open up the territory.
Yeah, that's really cool. Now, do you do any other real estate aside from commercial? Or are you mainly focused on commercial?
My focus is certainly commercial.
Okay.
I do a handful of residential sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I fall into it. Either it's a commercial customer that wants to sell a house or purchase a house.
Yeah.
So I've done probably 10 years, I've probably sold 15 homes.
Okay.
So not a lot.
Right.
I had a customer who had 3 rental properties, sold all 3, then sold their primary, and then they bought a new lake house, right? So
right.
It was all residential in a sense, but the rental properties are treated more like commercial.
Okay.
But yeah, so I get into it, but it's not my preferred discipline.
Yeah. That's probably kind of a benefit to you as well, I'm guessing, especially now being part of a solely residential firm. I'm guessing that kind of gives you a nice leverage point as far as being able to get referrals from residential agents because they know you're not going after their residential leads per se. It's kind of a nice balance point, I would imagine, to be able to refer back and forth.
That's exactly right. And that's one of the big strategic advantages that I'm really looking forward to. It's good to be specialized and to know your discipline because they're 2 different worlds between residential and commercial, 2 very, very different worlds. And I won't not take a residential deal. Of course, that's how we get paid. But I would rather have a team where I can just hand that off to somebody who does specialize in that. Yeah. Make sure that there's not something I'm missing, for my client to make sure they're best served, and then be there for them when they discover commercial opportunities that are outside their wheelhouse.
Okay. And now I'm guessing, I don't know much about commercial, but I'm guessing it's got to be extremely nuanced because I know a lot of people steer away from it. So it is one of those things where you really have to have the experience to make sure, like you said, you're serving your client's best interest. Yes,
it is a different arena. And it's the other end of the spectrum from residential. Residential transactions, you're buying or selling a home. It's highly emotional.
Yeah.
It's loosely based on needs and greatly based on wants and desires, a preferred school district, right? Like needs are how many bedrooms, but the extra den or the bonus room or the extra garage space in the garage, those are all wants, and it's very emotional. And on the commercial world, it is absolutely the opposite.
Yeah.
It is transactional. It is about specific needs for your business, your use, your zoning requirements, your road access, your power consumption, how high the ceiling's got to be because there's rack systems that you already own, and they're $50,000 worth of racks. You're not going to replace them, right?
Right.
So and with that comes a lot of little nuances. It's much more than saying, I need 1,500 square feet of office.
Right.
Right? Well, do you need an open concept or do you need 8 private rooms? Do you need a conference room? Do you have HIPAA requirements because of your profession where we need to have walls that go to the ceiling and don't stop below the drop and insulation? There's a lot to it. Every deal is slightly different. So every single deal becomes like an onion and just getting through those layers. So the transactional times are generally much, much, much longer on the commercial side. And it's just a different animal. And I think it's just whatever you're drawn to.
Yeah, no, that's cool that you said that because that makes me think now a residential realtor that would go into this thinking like, oh, I could do commercial, no big deal. And they have a person looking for that stuff like that you've picked up over your years of experience, even the HIPAA thing. Like I wouldn't have known anything about that. I would have been like, oh, that's great. It looks great. Size fits. But like you said, there's all these different requirements that unless you're in that business, you're probably going to miss or be unaware of.
Yeah, probably, right? And these things are all things I've learned along the way the hard way, or learning from my previous broker, having somebody hold my hand. And that's the discipline I focused on. So these are the things that are top of mind for me now.
Right.
Right.
And now you're an investor yourself, correct?
Yes. I am.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. Practice what you preach, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's an interesting point you bring up. I do have some property. I've got one Airbnb condo, which has become quite trendy.
Nice.
And I could talk all day about just that, right? But then I have a piece of commercial property in Brighton, about a 10,000 square foot strip mall, so a smaller strip center. But that was a recent acquisition. So focused on that, and it's great because that's what I work in every day.
Yeah.
Anyways. And as you said, when you're in the commercial space, whether you realize it or not, commercial real estate should be analyzed as if it was a piece of your portfolio.
Right.
And that's how you should look at it, right? It's a component of your investment portfolio.
Yeah.
However you want to slice that, even if you have a Jimmy John's franchise and you're simply leasing.
Yeah.
Well, that Jimmy John's business is part of your income stream.
Right.
And the specific location of it and its visibility to the main road and the ease of in and out, because we know if your customers, if it's hard to make a left-hand turn, they're going to stop coming to you, right? So all of these things, commercial real estate is really part of your investment portfolio.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, it's got to perform. Obviously, it's a huge investment. Like you said, if it's not going to perform well, then it's a bad investment.
Right. And it's understanding that. And when I'm working with investment clients that are simply investing in real estate, it's all about the P&Ls of the property, the rate of return on the property, the carrying cost associated with property. It's very pro forma, line item based. But when I'm working with tenants, it's completely different, but it's helping them to understand that. That's where I get really passionate about. That's what led me to this business. Is finding a tenant, they've got a business they want to relocate or a business they want to open, and helping them make sure that they are successful, that they don't, people, they create a list. My location's got to check all these boxes. Most of the time their list is incomplete and focused inaccurately.
Yeah, which has got to be a huge thing. Like you said, that's what I was going to ask you was, do you take on, I'm sure you have a handful of very experienced property investors that probably know kind of what they're looking for. They know about, P&L and all that stuff. But so I'm guessing that you do work with newer clients too, that are new to real estate investing. And that's got to be huge for you and them that you know what you're doing and you know these things, like you said, that they're missing on their list to help make sure that it's going to perform.
I'd like to think that I'm an asset at the table. Over the last 10 years, I have developed a handful of clients that are very repeat investor clients that hold a lot of real estate, and built relationships and kind of earned that and become their go-to guy. And I've been able to learn a lot from them as well. And I'm always open and looking for new people that want to invest in this. As myself, I'm a young real estate investor. I'm new to doing this, right? I work in the business, but I finally have my own real retail property here to focus on. I love working with new people and helping them, learn what they don't know.
Right.
And it's usually somebody that, they're successful in another way, or their business, or they have a more regular type of corporate job, and they've got cash they want to deploy and utilize. And a lot of times it's somebody that owns their business and they've been renting for years, and now they want to find a location they can purchase, and acquire. So there's different components of it, but I absolutely love it. It's a ton of fun. It's just enough of numbers and investing, as well as being able to, be boots on the street, not behind a desk.
Right. Yeah, no, that's exciting part of it. What did you do before commercial real estate?
So I was and am still like an independent small business owner.
Okay.
So in 2003, I purchased a UPS store franchise over in Howell. And I sold that in 2020. So I had that for quite a while. Yeah. But I got, and along the way, basically I was young. I was like 23, 24 years old when I got in there, and I took over an existing location, and I just, I signed the lease because what else am I going to do, right? So along the way, I learned some lessons the hard way. I should have read. Maybe I should have read this a little closer. Right? What do you mean I got to replace the rooftop unit, right? It's like $9,000, right? So I learned some things the hard way, but at any rate, the business was successful and it grew. And I started looking for opportunities to go out and do something else with my time. And a friend of mine introduced me to real estate, and I thought it was the perfect blend between my strengths as an independent entrepreneur, already being networked into the community and kind of knowing people locally. And then taking my business acumen and my sort of background in finance and kind of blending it all together.
Yeah, no, it's a nice missing piece of the puzzle. And like you said, even if you're going to be that investor yourself, why not submerge yourself in that and learn everything you can about it? And that just makes you more of an asset to your clients.
Absolutely. Well put.
So now you have your own investments. I know you're also part owner of a brewery. Is that correct?
Yes. Eternity Brewing in Howell.
Okay.
Part owner there. There's 4 partners on that project. We bought that 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago now. We got involved with that project, and that was really more of a passion project for us.
Yeah.
We were all customers, loyal customers, big supporters of the brewery, big supporters of the husband and wife team that founded it and opened it up. And we had the opportunity to take it over. Their life had changed, and we're really proud of the brand, and we're really proud of what we've done there. We got a new brewer this past spring. He's fabulous, brewing some great beers, and we've cultivated a great atmosphere. That's one of those businesses that I did everything that I would tell somebody not to do. Right? Normally I tell everybody take the emotion out of it.
Yeah,
it's about income stream. It's about return on investment.
Right.
Got to diverge yourself from the emotion. Like the first talk I would have with anybody thinking about going into business. And we did that for emotion. Yeah, I had my other things going, right. and it was like, oh, this will be fun. This will be cool. And in many ways, it has been a lot of fun, and it has been very cool. And I'm very proud of what we've done there. And our customers tell us all the time, like they like it. And we're getting new customers all the time. But yeah, that's been a whole lot more work than I ever thought.
Oh yeah. Well, when you said passion, I'm thinking immediately passion, equates to emotion. So right there, yeah, the business side of it kind of goes out the window, but
it's nothing I would have done on my own, but there was like 4 of us and we're thinking, hey, it's only a little bit of money each,
Yeah. You were probably drinking beers while you were coming up with the plan.
Yeah, right. That always works well.
Yeah. I know how that goes all too well. So then outside of that, and now you're building a house as well, correct?
Yes. Yeah. My wife and I are building a house right now. I mean, geez. I don't know. We're building a house on Chilson Road.
Okay.
I tried to call the top of the market, and back in September of 2020, I thought, man, this is about as red hot as this real estate's ever going to be. So we sold our primary house. We were going into election, whatever side you're on of the, left and right. We were going into a very divided election. We still had very active code restrictions. I thought to myself, there is no way this can end well.
Yeah.
I don't care who wins this election. The bottom's going to drop out of this thing, right? Yeah. So we sold, rented an apartment, said we're going to sit on the sidelines with cash, and we're going to go shopping in the spring.
Right.
Well, here we are like 2 years later. I probably shot myself in the foot for $50,000 on the house that we sold, right? I spent 2 years living in an apartment with 2 boys, 4 and 7, and 2 dogs, 2-bedroom apartment behind Meyer and Howell.
Yeah.
Where my wife lived when we got together and started dating.
Full circle.
Full circle. So we finally gave up the house hunt and we picked up 5 acres 1 year ago and started down the path of building. As we thought we had that figured out.
Yeah.
And realized we didn't have anything figured out. We wanted to do something different and custom, so we're building one of those barn dominiums, which is pretty cool, and a lot of people are really interested in it.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool. I'm going to be really excited about this, but everything is different, right? Like the trades are like, this is just different. Everything's different. Everything's got to be figured out because we're trying to take a commercial structure, but not build it exactly how they build commercial structure, because you want to build it a little better than that because it's going to be your home, right? And then from the home side, it's not a traditional home either. So like the engineering and architecture that is behind it to make it all work has been radically different.
Yeah.
So it's been a big learning process, and it's been slow. We're about 10 weeks behind. My goal was to break ground right after Labor Day. We poured our spread footings yesterday, so we're getting there.
Nice.
But yeah, we're 9 or 10 weeks behind where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping now that we're getting close to erecting steel, it'll start to speed up.
That's great. Now that's why I wanted to ask, because that is one of the things that fascinates me. Like you said, a lot of people get excited about it. Like barn dominiums, it's one of like things that I follow like 3-4 pages on it because some of them are just incredible. And it seems like the amount of space you get is a lot different too. And is that because of the fact that it's a steel building?
Yeah, there's some real advantages to it. And I would say there's two major categories of it. There are the people that build the buildings as inexpensively as possible to maximize like square footage for the lowest cost.
Yeah.
And they tend to be big rectangles. They look more like a barn.
Right.
And then inside there, oftentimes on one end of it, they put up a wall and put a residence in.
Yeah.
We wanted the look of the industrial look of the steel.
Right.
But we didn't want that barn look. So we did a bunch of design elements that cost more to make it look a little bit more like a traditional home.
Right.
It kind of took it another way. So we have the industrial look and the industrial strength with a more traditional home, but it was definitely at a premium price. They are cool. One of the biggest advantages is that it's a freestanding building.
Yeah.
So your walls hold up your rafters. The whole shell is self-sustaining, so everything inside can be anywhere you want it to be.
Right.
Nothing's load-bearing.
Yeah.
Got a nice big vaulted ceiling. We are doing a ranch, so it's a ranch home. So you can have huge open spaces.
Right.
You don't have to worry about cross members, beams. And then we're putting a bonus room above the garage, so we've got little extra space up there.
Yeah.
But it is, it's a really big open thing. You have to give up some architectural features.
Right.
Because it's like building with blocks. You can build whatever you can build out of squares and rectangles, you can build.
Right.
Right. But you can't get creative with this little bump out here, or this little offset.
Right.
So you do end up with some flat looking surfaces. To try to combat that, we did some things like we turned our trusses so they span the width of the house, the widest point, as opposed to running the narrowest.
Yeah.
So our peak, so you're looking at a peak instead of like looking at a flat side of a roof when you approach the home. But yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's unique, and we've even gotten super positive response from the county.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, they think it's cool. I mean, we got assigned a specific building inspector instead of whoever's available.
Right.
Because they want one person to track this all the way through because it's so different.
Yeah, they probably want to come up with some new variances and things like that while they're doing it, I would imagine, to going forward for the next one, because it is kind of becoming a thing.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting.
I've seen plans for the outside of your house, which it is really cool. I mean, you guys did some things with like the way you combine the buildings to where it does look more like a big custom home. One thing that I always see in these barndominium groups is they're always like, oh, you can have this massive space, for less money. But I'm guessing that, like you said, by the time you get into it, design elements, changes, finding trades to do it all, is it comparable to a regular custom built home, or is it still coming in a little bit less than you would have paid otherwise?
No, I'd say it's comparable,
and
maybe more.
Right.
Like if I was all about the budget, yes, I could. We're building a 2,400 square foot home. Yeah. Right. The core home is 2,400 square foot. If I was just about the money, I could have done it a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
But if you want to do it and have it be comparable, it's really not. I'm finding it's not less.
Right.
It's unique. It's different. It's industrial strength. My house has a 150 mile per hour wind rating on it. Right. My paint has a 50-year warranty on the paint.
Yeah.
But is it this big hunk of square footage for less money? No. Right. I mean, that all comes into the finishes. Yeah. Right. Like if I wanted to have a stamped concrete inside instead of a floor, perhaps. But if you're going to finish it off like you would a traditional home, it's still the same square footage. It needs the same amount of kitchen cabinets, and, and tile floor and wood floor, and
the money's in the finishes.
Yeah, the money's in the finishes, right? So sure, I could have built 2,400 square foot plus a 3-car garage. I think the first time I looked, there was like $90,000. Yeah, and you're thinking my whole structure for $90,000. Yeah, but that's the big rectangle, right? Not the look you really want. Oh, and don't forget about your foundation, and you need 80 yards of concrete for the footings for this thing. And we thought it was going to be a lot cheaper. It's not going to be a lot cheaper,
right? But
it'll be different.
Yeah, different for sure. Probably look really cool. And like you said, all that stuff being pretty much maintenance free. I mean, when you break it down, the true cost of ownership, that's probably where you'd end up seeing the savings over the long run.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's a component. And we're trying to keep that in mind as we pick things like windows and doors, like spend a little more now to get a better quality because, I'm not going to put in a fiberglass door when the whole structure's steel. I'm going to do a steel door, right? And the interior, we're planning to deal with all metal studs as opposed to wood, because why introduce a combustible that the house doesn't have now, right? And metal studs are lighter and they're true, you know. So there's a lot of there's going to be a lot of unique things about it, and I think it will be a pretty bulletproof,
for sure,
structure when it's all done. So.
It'll be nice too when you do anything down the road with it, like when you're doing. I flip houses too, and it's like there's never a square wall. You know what I mean?
Right.
Everything's bowed, everything's strange, something like that, like. Just those little things, like even painting, it's probably going to be a breeze inside because you can actually be able to tape and paint and everything's square.
Yes, it should be. Theoretically, right? Like right now it's a pile of steel sitting on my property. But yes, theoretically, I mean, it's all manufactured and shipped, you know, and it goes together like a giant erector set.
Yeah, it'll be cool to watch. I'm sure it'll go up quick once it actually starts going up.
The structure should go up really quick. Yeah. So we're hopefully just a couple weeks out from doing that. And that'll be really exciting to get that material just off the ground and up in the air will feel like a big accomplishment.
Right. Certainly. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to it. Hoping to move in late spring, early summer.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Maybe I'll come by and do a tour of it when it's all done.
We'll have to do something, certainly.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So now with the commercial real estate, like you said, I know it's very different, but I'd imagine the core fundamentals as far as like your client base has got to be very similar to residential. People want to work with someone they know, like, and trust, which seems like that's the case with you. I mean, I know you just switched to KW, and I know you just switched a bunch of your signage out. So that seems like the bulk of your clients chose to stay with you, even though you were switching firms.
Yes, and not unlike residential real estate or any other professional you trust, your financial advisor, your doctor, your tax preparer, that relationship is ultimately critical. Yeah, it's absolutely critical. Unlike residential real estate, the commercial clientele tends to be more regular. On a residential, you sell them a house, help them find a house, and the industry average is 7 to 10 years before that couple wants to make another move or needs to use you again. So oftentimes I think what they struggle with is keeping that relationship established when there's no reason to continue that conversation over that much period of time. Right. On the commercial side, it is quite a bit different. It tends to be much more frequent of repeat, even if I help somebody do a lease. Most leases are 3 to 5 years, some of them being 2. Then they need to re-up. They either renegotiate or they've outgrown the space, or they just want me back at the table when they're renewing. Right. And then if I'm representing a landlord who's got a handful of properties, well, there's always something to work on, something to lease. I have some clients that I've moved twice. They opened them in their first location. Right. They outgrew it, moved them again, and then moved them again. So that's great, and they become referrals and feeders. Yeah. So I'm talking every day to 20 or 30 people. Right. So it's different from that. You have a much more two-way, consistent, regular communication, and your reputation is everything, and how you treat them, how you take care of them is ultimately what matters. Absolutely. You just want to make sure that you are armed with a tool set to make sure you're doing the best for that client. Yeah. And I mean, one of the things, as you're saying it too, I'm kind of thinking of it, which I never thought of it. With commercial, it's kind of cool because it's like you could sell somebody a commercial building. Like, for an example, it's a strip mall. You sell them the building, but now you're still on because you're going to be probably trying to handle the leases for them. That's exactly right.
And then through those referrals, now the people that you put in the space could then technically become a referral as they grow their business and decide to move or then move on and purchase their own building. So the referral part has to be probably the biggest component of the business, I would imagine, for you.
You're exactly right, and it's gigantic. And I have a industrial space right now, 13,000 square feet, that I'm trying to lease. I represented the buyer. We bought it in September. Yeah. Now I'm going to be the leasing agent on that space, and I get many calls on it. And then if it doesn't make that building might generate a call, and then that opportunity doesn't fit in that building. Ultimately, I end up representing them and taking them someplace else. Right. So it continues to feed on itself, certainly. Yeah, and it's got to be also. I'm imagining it's got to be very stressful at times. Like you said, somebody buys a huge building like that, and then you're tasked with leasing it. And then obviously you want to perform on that end of it too. And that's where it's got to be stressful, where like it's not just a one and done. They bought the building. Okay, now you're still in charge of getting this place rented out and performing the way you had probably, imagined it would. Exactly. So even not having actual equity in the building, there's some partnership there.
Yeah.
This same building I was just referencing, I presented it to this client who was looking for an opportunity in Livingston County. I took him on 3 tours. I said, I think this one is the best one. Yeah. Here's what I believe we could rent the space for. Based on these numbers, we should generate this much net revenue. So it is me saying, I can do this.
Right.
You buy it and I'll do this for you.
Yeah.
And it is stressful. Every single day it's on my mind. You know,
right.
I'm invested in that property despite having no money in it.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is a great way of looking at it too, though. I mean, that's probably comforting from an investor standpoint to realize that you are mentally invested in it. It's not just a transaction where, okay, you bought it, hopefully it rents, you know, like it, right. You are losing sleep over it, which means that you're genuinely involved and care about it.
It's absolutely true. And I've gotten to know the client, and I would call us friends now, right? Yeah. And I want to deliver. I want to deliver because it's my reputation, and I said I could. Right. I believe this is where the market is. But then that client's going to stay with me, and we're going to do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, being involved in commercial, do you have a pretty good toolbox as far as people that you can go to for commercial lending, contractors, you know, all those different types of people that you would need involved in the transaction?
I certainly have my short list of contractors that I go to, but you know, most of the time my clients have their relationships. Yeah. So typically when I'm dealing with an investor type person, they have their relationships with their banking relationship is already someplace. So gotcha. they tend to bring that, and they tend to also have their trades. So I get into that less than you would think. Yeah. When I have a situation where I need a new build out per se, I definitely have my handful of people that right. I call, and I have, you know, I would always refer the local lending institutions to people looking for new financing. Yeah, the smaller banks, the credit unions, as always, no big secret, they tend to be a little easier to work with than right. the large institutions, certainly. But oftentimes, my clients already have that component handled. Right. So it's good for me to know people and stay plugged in, but they usually don't need that from me.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense because you're talking about typically probably high net worth individuals if they're, you know, buying big commercial real estate, which makes sense. They probably already have a pretty tight banking relationship with somebody with that kind of money. The other thing too that you were saying that I found interesting was as far as finding out what the space has and if it's going to work for your clients. One of the things you said was power, which, you know, obviously it's like somebody might look at a spot. Yeah, this is a great spot, but depending on what they do in there, they may need a high amount of power, which has got to be difficult to find sometimes.
It is. Yeah, it can be a real limiting factor. It's one of those things that people do sort of take for granted. They don't think about it, right? There's electricity. Of course there's electricity. Right. But is there enough? What are you doing? What kind of machines are you running? Yeah. How much amperage do you need? I was just working on a deal. We weren't able to ultimately make the deal because the building needed a power upgrade. And that power upgrade was going to require a new transformer and new sub panels. It was like a $50,000 upgrade. Yeah. So that cost blew the deal. I'm working with a tenant seeking space right now who has a power requirement of 3,000 amps. Wow. That's a tremendous power requirement. If I use no other filters except for 3,000 amps, yeah. I've got 7 buildings available in the state, right, that yeah. pop up. So, you know, specific nuances like that are what make or break the deals.
Right. Yeah, I know from past experience, that's a big thing where people, same thing like you said, it's got power. Yeah, and then they're like, oh, just add more outlets. Well, you know, you got to figure out what kind of a load that's putting on the grid. And if it can't handle it, then like you said, that's a very expensive upgrade.
Yep. When you get into the outside transformers and new lines and new substations, even this 3,000 amp service, we were looking at a building that was perfect in every other way. So we said, well, let's explore the power upgrade. The rough quote was $1 to $2 million. Wow. So call us back. We'll get more specific if that doesn't scare you off. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Which I'm guessing it probably did.
Yeah, we went elsewhere. Yeah. We're going to continue looking.
Right. So what are you looking for when you look for something like that? Is it you're looking for something that may have possibly been used in some similar fashion previously, where they would have already paid for the upgrade?
Yeah, basically. If it's got that level of infrastructure, then it was, you know, something in the similar. Like, so this client does, press molding. So it's his presses that take right. a lot of power. So I'm looking at industrial buildings where they've already worked some sort of manufacturing, right? You know, with heavy electricity, and he's a very clean product. So yeah. we don't necessarily want a heavy dirty user,
right.
where there's going to be a lot of oil residues and things like that left over in the building.
Right.
But that's exactly it. You're hoping to find a building that is already outfitted. A more relatable, but the exact same point that I run into frequently is water use. And this is one that people never think about when they're locating a business. Is at the different municipalities, there's a measure called an REU, residential equivalency unit.
Okay.
And that is the amount of water that they classify businesses into different categories, and each category is assigned these REUs. That's where they just broadly say, this is approximately how much water you're going to need.
Yeah.
And so if you're opening a business that has a high REU and you're going to go into a space that had a low REU, you have to buy the difference.
Okay.
They're very expensive. Like very expensive.
I would have never even thought of anything like that.
Right. So if you have a retail space and it's always been retail and it has one REU assigned to the address, and these things live with the address. Assigned to the address is one REU. That's good for a bathroom, a general commercial space. But you want to go in there and open a restaurant.
Yeah.
And that restaurant, they say, needs 6 REUs. You got to buy 5. Well, if there's $7,000 or $8,000 a piece, that's a fee you write the check up front. And that covers the infrastructure of supplying the building, right? Which sometimes, if you're going to start using that much water, they might have to put a new main in. They might have to increase the size.
Yeah.
And it's that fee. So once that fee is paid and those REUs are acquired for that address, they live there. So if you do want to open up a restaurant, it's certainly best to find something that already had those REUs.
Right.
I can tell you the brewery exists. Eternity Brewing exists where it exists.
Yeah.
Because the building was previously used as a laundromat. Had excess REUs.
Gotcha.
So when you're, those things, and that's a thing that I deal with a lot that people never think about until you get into it. But those things will absolutely crush a deal. When you find out you can use this building, but it's $30,000 to the water department right now.
Right. That makes sense, because I was just thinking that as you were saying that, I was thinking of the brewery, because I'm like, a brewery has to have a lot. I'm guessing you probably use quite a bit of water.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of water, right? Water is the biggest ingredient in beer. We brew a lot of gallons of beer. Yeah. So that ended up where it was. Now, I didn't own it then. I didn't put it there, but that ended up where it was because the available water was already there and paid for.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
So it can be a real value add asset to a landlord. You get a tenant that's got to swallow it and they pay for it and they leave. That REU stays right there because it's tied to the physical infrastructure.
Yeah.
So oftentimes that becomes a negotiation point between the tenant and the landlord.
Right.
On the rent, because that's a capital improvement that's going to ultimately benefit that landlord.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, there's 6 things you've already laid out that I'm like, as an average person would have zero idea. So, I mean, it definitely makes sense to go to somebody that's got the experience to know, like, this is probably not on your list. Like you said, somebody comes to you new, REU is probably not one of the things they have on their list. But that's one of the things that you're going to bring as a value add and say, hey, no, we need to look into this, this, and this.
Yeah, these are the things that run through my head immediately when they start talking about what is their business? What are they looking to place in a space?
Yeah.
I can start to knock spaces off the list right away.
Yeah, and even a value add to a client just looking to buy a commercial facility, whether it be a strip mall, whatever, those type of things that you're armed with, like, okay, it's got all these different components that make this a value add because of the people you're going to be able to attract as tenants, which is another key piece that you would have to really know to be able to figure out what's a good deal and what's not.
Right.
Yeah, that's huge. Very cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing all this stuff with me. If somebody wants to get involved in commercial, so you said you'll help somebody that's new. If somebody were to call you and they were a green real estate investor or hoping to be a real estate investor, would that be somebody that you would take on as a client? Like if they said, hey, I'm looking to get into commercial real estate as far as buying commercial property.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Exactly the person I'd love to sit down with, have a nice face-to-face, talk through items like this, find out what their appetite is for risk. If there's a specific property group they like they really want to be in multifamily, or I'm really looking for professional office space. Yeah. I have clients that are investors, but they like certain things. For whatever reason. Yeah. Usually it's a comfort level. They understand it. Usually if they have some multifamily, it's easier to add a few more, right? They feel like they know the market, they know the product. But all of this conversation, that's exactly what I'm looking for all the time. The buying opportunities right now are very few and far between. I definitely have more people looking to buy and invest in real estate than I have properties to sell them.
Yeah.
But it's good to have these dialogues now, so I know what they're looking for.
Right.
I can keep my eyes and ears open for that, so that when something does pop, we can get it really quick.
Yeah, because you probably have that happen once in a while where you see something came on the market and you're like, I know exactly who this is for. You know,
That happens a lot. Yeah, that happens a lot.
So now, and you kind of shared some things with me too that I think is really cool. As far as like you shared a couple articles with me that I read, and where do you see things going? Like as far as I know, a lot of it was on the real estate investment trusts and things like that. What kind of a ripple effect do you think all that will have on the market as a whole?
Well, I won't pretend to have a crystal ball because remember that house I sold 2 years ago?
Right.
You know, obviously interest rates are up. That's going to have a cooling effect for people who need to borrow money. Mm-hmm. That's why they raise interest rates. That's what they're trying to do.
Right.
Cool things off. But in every storm, there are people who rise.
Yeah.
And so as things cool and the frenzy cools, you will see prices depress a little bit. Now, how far, I don't know, right? Like there's a million pundits that'll give you a bunch of different answers.
Right.
I don't think I feel like there's any sort of major crash coming because I don't think the lending is as risky as it was back in 2008, let's say. So it'll just mean that people aren't as fluid to move and buy new as they once were. Right. But those people who need to sell will have to discount pricing. So there will be opportunities to buy, as there always is.
Yeah.
But if you're leveraged now, you might have to ride this thing out. I think COVID is redrawn. Well, we know it's redrawn a lot of the work scenario.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that we're starting to see some of the larger companies recall people back to the office more. I think that's a good thing for a lot of reasons. But what worries me about that not happening is gross vacancy rates on large office buildings.
Right.
And you touched on the real estate investment trust, are these huge funds that own millions of square foot.
Yeah.
And private investors, right? Like you just put money into it like you would a mutual fund and you get a dividend check. And these things fund these office spaces. If a lot of those or enough of those go underperforming, I wonder what sort of ripple effect that will have because it will hurt individual investors who have money in that. And I don't know what the future is for those products. You know, this started with the malls 10 years ago.
Yeah.
They're trying to reinvent the malls.
Right.
What to do with it because there's not the same retailers to eat it up.
Yeah.
They're trying to turn them into apartments and condos and indoor parks and whole lifestyle communities that are enclosed.
Right.
And I think there's going to be ultimately some office space that has to get reinvented too.
Yeah.
And it will be interesting. So what comes out of that will probably be very cool.
Right.
But getting there will not be without its level of pain.
Right. Which I think, like you said, it could be really cool. I mean, look at even like places like Chicago, like where they take, the industrial lofts and things like that. I mean, some of it's the coolest real estate there is.
Yep.
But yeah, like you said, it's got to have obviously some downtime to figure out what it's going to be used as, what's the best use, what's the right price to get it at, because that's a ton of build out and other things. But yeah, hopefully the end product is something really cool.
I mean, one thing that's always true in every single market is for anyone to win, someone else had to lose. Right. So you can rest assured that somebody's going to lose and somebody's going to win no matter what happens to the market. It's just a matter of your specific position in it and what end of that you fall on.
Right.
Are you leveraged now and heavy on assets and tight on cash flow? And if you lose a couple of tenants, you can't cover,
right?
Or are you cash heavy and you can make acquisitions in the, when they come?
Yeah. Now, and you may or may not know this. I'm just always curious about this. I had always heard, a couple of years ago about any small single family home that would be, ideally a good rental property. And then somebody was saying like, oh yeah, all the investors are buying these things up. Do any of these trusts hold a lot of single family residences as rentals?
They certainly do. So within the real estate investment trust, they're in a sense a lot like mutual funds where they'll have a target. Mm-hmm. Some of them are, we only do apartments. Some of them are, we do single family homes.
Yeah.
Some of them are, we do malls, we do office space.
Yeah.
They're very, very targeted. And yes, there has been recently a lot of money pumped into single family homes by some of these big players. Blackstone's been in the news recently for it. And I'll be honest that some of that feels odd to me. It feels like an odd product for them to own.
Yeah.
Because managing single family homes is difficult because they're not collected in one central place. You can't just put a property manager here and say, here's 100 homes to look after. They're too spread out.
Yeah.
That feels like a weird asset class for them to be so heavy handed in, but they are.
Yeah.
So they must know something.
Right.
I don't know that I'd necessarily think that it's healthy for somebody to have control like that over neighborhoods where, you know, if something happens to them as a company, suddenly there's 100 homes dumped on the market that depresses values for the other 10,000 people who live there, you know, but I don't make the rules.
Yeah. That's kind of where I was thinking. I'm thinking like, okay, like these trusts, let's say one of them decides they have to liquidate some of these assets. And if they're single family homes, and all of a sudden you flood the market with these single family homes. And like you said, if they're all in one area, I mean, you're going to depress that value significantly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a concern for me. Do I think that's happening in Livingston County? No. Right. But I do think that is a real risk, and it is concerning to me that some of these things start to fail, or they start to need to free up cash, and they end up flooding the market, and it's that secondary ripple effect that, you know, John and Jane Doe might be fine, but now all of a sudden they just took it on the chin with their property value, and maybe their bank calls their HELOC in. Yeah. You know, like who knows? Or maybe they have an open line of credit and the bank locks it and freezes it because property values are down. Like there's all these things. Yeah. You know, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't want to be all doomsday about it, but it's interesting that these big funds have moved so heavy into single family homes the last few years. Yeah. That's kind of new. They never really did that before. And that's different. And I don't know if it makes me feel very comfortable.
That's a cool outlook on it. And the thing is too, that I like the stuff you sent me, it's kind of, now that there's a commercial aspect over there at KW, it's given me like this new information where I'm like, oh man, there's all this new stuff that I didn't know about. Now I'm reading about it, and it's all really good to learn. It's gotta be a great value add to the brokerage as a whole, just because now there's somebody that you can legitimately talk to and figure out these things that a lot of people just don't know about. And it just kind of gives you a more well-rounded thought process on the whole deal, real estate as a whole, which, like you said, the ripple effect from some of these big commercial things can have an effect on single family residents.
Yeah, it is a deep and broad industry in the commercial, and it's because it is so intimately tied with investing. Yeah, and so that they really go hand in hand. And I hope that it is a tremendous asset for the firm. One of the reasons for the move was to be with the bigger team and to bring. I keep telling people over there, think of me as a new drawer in that toolbox that you already had. Right, there's a whole new drawer now of things that we can do and things we can help our clients with. Right, and better education for all of us. Yeah. And to accomplish the goals. Of what they're looking to do. Right.
No, that's awesome. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
That's great. Well, they can get a hold of me at Trevor Brooks at kw.com. It should be pretty easy to find. I'm seated right now in the Brighton office over by Best Buy. Perfect. We're building out a brand new office in Howell as well. I'm going to split time between those two offices. I want to have physical presence in the entire county. Yeah. So I'll probably bounce back and forth a little bit. But certainly, Trevor L. Brooks at kw.com. All right. And my cell phone is 810-599-1469. I stumbled there for a minute because we're trying to put together we'll have an office line. Oh, gotcha. We actually have an old school hard line, right? Nice. We can have consistency on that phone number. Yeah. That'll be in when we take possession of the Howell property. Okay. So then I'll probably shift to making that my primary phone number. Awesome. But absolutely, I'm here to talk to anybody that's got any interest in commercial real estate, whether you're a tenant renting and you need to move, you need to expand, you want to look for something to buy, or whether you're a new investor or an experienced investor looking to get into the market. So
very cool. Yeah. All right. And we'll share all your stuff at the bottom of the podcast and the links as well for anybody that wants to reach out. Thanks for coming on. It's been very educational, and I appreciate you taking the time.
I really appreciate it, Brent. Thanks for thinking of me.
You got it. Thanks.